Resourceful Designer, episode 333, Design Trends for 2024.
Welcome to the Resourceful Designer Podcast, offering solutions to streamline your graphic and web design business so you can get back to designing. And now, your host, who once had himself paged at the mall to make himself feel important, Mark DeCote.
Oh yes, the crazy things we do as kids for attention. Anyway, in this episode, I want to talk about design trends. Specifically, I want to talk about a trend report that FreePik has released. Now, if you're not familiar with FreePik, FreePik is a website at freepik.com. They offer high-quality photos, videos, vectors, Photoshop files, Illustrator files, icons, and so much more. And as the name suggests, you can get these things for free. Now, there is a pricing structure if you want to get access to more or better things, but you are allowed a certain number of free downloads every month. So check them out at freepik.com. Now, I will say FreePik is the one who actually reached out to me via email and asked me if I would be willing to discuss their new 2024 trends report on my podcast. And I had a look and I thought, oh, this is really interesting. And I said, sure, I'll do this. Now, for full transparency, they are not compensating me in any way. I am not being paid. I am not getting anything for free. They just asked if I would be willing to do it. And I thought this is a good idea, so I decided to do it. Now, I want to say something about trends. First of all, I've never been one to pay too much attention to trends, what's trending, what people are doing. I will use other designs as inspiration, but I don't know if the ones that I look at or quote unquote steal ideas from are trendy or not. It's not something I've ever really paid attention to. Now, the other thing about trend reports, especially this one here from FreePik, is, I kind of scratch my head at the validity of it. Now, if you're familiar with Logo Lounge from logolounge.com, Logo Lounge puts out a logo trend report every year. Now, that one I really enjoy because if you're not familiar, Logo Lounge is a deposit or a repository of logos. And every year they put out a book. And thousands of logos get submitted in the hopes that they would be put into the book. It's a big honor to have your logos in one of their volumes. Well, through all these submissions, they put out a yearly report to say what the trends are, what they've seen, and they have the data to back this up. They look at all the logos that they've received and they say, well, look, there's a lot of logos that use things like, say, some of the past trends were speech bubbles. There's a lot of logos that have some sort of speech bubble in them. Or there's a lot of logos that have a 3D effect to them. Or there's a lot of logos that have curvy lines, almost like snake-like lines through them. And they have the data to back up these trends that they're putting out because they can see that, oh, we've received X amount of logos and this percentage of them had this on it, so there's a trend. Designers from across the world are doing this, so that's a trend that we're seeing. And again, they look at the year back before, so they'll say, this is the trend we saw in the previous year. Now, what FreePik is doing is they're predicting trends for the year to come. They're saying these are the trends that are going to influence design in 2024. And I don't know how you can do that. I don't know. They don't specify. They don't tell you what sort of data they have backing this stuff up. I don't know if they have something that is indicating that these are going to be the trends. They don't tell you. So, it's one of those things I kind of look at and I go, they're very interesting. I've looked through all these trends and they are very interesting. Some of them are really nice. I really like them. But I'm not sure that they can actually predict that, oh, this is what designers are going to be doing, or more designers are going to be leaning this way in 2024. That may just be me. Maybe they do have some scientific way of figuring this out. But as far as I know, I still scratch my head and go, how do you know what I and my other fellow designers out there are going to be doing this year? I don't think you can. Anyways, if you want to follow along with this report, I'll include a link in the show notes for this. So if you're on your podcast app, just look at the show notes that are there, or look on the website at resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 333. Or you just visit freepik.com, and that's FREEPIK.com/visual-trends-2024. And you can follow along with the report and get a visual for what I'm talking about, because I'm going to try to explain what some of these trends are, but some of them you really need to see to understand. So let's start off with the very first one, and that's florals and botanicals. So they say that there's going to be a lot more of nature in design this coming year, especially tied with soft tones and pastel colors. They say it's the perfect combination for flowers, leaves, plants, and all that, florals and botanical stuff. And whether it's in photography or illustration or whatever. And they anticipate that there's going to be florals used as accent pieces, as border, as background imagery, and as main imagery in designs. Now, personally, I'm not a very flowery type person. I don't design, or I've rarely designed using flowers or, as they put, botanicals. I have done it in the past, but it's not my go-to. I'm not comfortable. Even though I can do it, I'm just not comfortable. It doesn't feel natural. I have to really think about how to place the flowers and that. So I don't anticipate this would be any sort of trend that I will follow, but yeah, we'll see. But that's the first one. Oh, by the way, there's 15 trends I'm going through here. So that was the first trend, is florals and botanicals. The second trend, and this one here is one you almost have to see it to understand it, is hollow abstract 3D shapes. So what they're describing here is just random three-dimensional shapes used in design that have when they call it holographic touch to it. So it's almost like luminescent, the way the coloring is on it. It almost looks like, the 3D image is wrapped in colorful cellophane or something like that. It gives it a very futuristic type look. And this is very interesting. Again, you almost have to see this one to understand it. And I could see how this would be an interesting design choice, but it would have to have its purpose. Like, it's not something you can just throw on there for no reason. You would have, I know with design, you never throw anything on there for no reason, but there would have to be like an actual purpose, I think, to doing something like this. And personally, I'm just looking at the examples, like they give a couple of examples of things. And I don't know if it's something I would use. I like it. I really like the way it looks. In my mind, I'm having a hard time figuring out how I would incorporate this into any sort of design. But that may just be me. I know there's some other designers out there, possibly you, who could really embrace this sort of thing. Now, the third visual trend that they anticipate for 2024 is liquid 3D fonts. And, I think this is funny. What they're showing here as examples is letters or words that made to look like, they're made out of water, or they're made out of chocolate, or they're made out of lava, or, just 3D effects to them. And I find this one funny because I remember this trend from years ago. This is the same thing when Photoshop first introduced their bevel, the ability to bevel something with a button. Next thing you know, everywhere you looked, there was type that was beveled. Beveled, embossed, it has a sheen on it. Well, that's exactly what this is. It's just 3D fonts. It's the wording on your design made to look three-dimensional. Now, yes, we can do a lot more now than what we were able to do back then when Photoshop first introduced that. But it's funny to me because, a lot of these trends, they seem to repeat. They're things that we've seen before and they're coming back. Well, they anticipate this. But when I look at it, I still think of this as a tired trend, depending on how you do it. I'm looking at some of the examples. They have one here where it's the word blood written in red, and it looks to me like it's just a plain old Photoshop, red type that was added a bevel to it. And because I was around when this trend was very popular, got to the point where it became almost a joke that everything had a bevel on it, I have a hard time thinking that this is a trend that'll take off again. Now, again, I may be wrong. And maybe to a younger designer who wasn't around when that trend became oversaturated, they may see this and think, wow, this is really something I want to embrace. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. Actually, I really like the way it looks. It's just personally, I'd be a little bit hesitant on the use of this because of my experience in the past when this became too oversaturated, where every design around had some sort of bevel or emboss. Now, they do talk about 3D, so it's not just embossing and embeveling. They have some 3D shapes to them, and that part is interesting, and I'd be curious to see how that goes. But that's also something I've been seeing over the years, so I don't know if it's just going to be more in 2024, if that's what they're saying. But anyways. Now, the fourth trend is vibrant, bright colors. And they're talking about how people will be using vibrant, bright colors to instill emotion in the design. It's a very positive, upbeat imagery to have all these bright colors. And I don't discount that, but what I think is this is not an upcoming trend. I don't think that bright colors in design was something that was ever out of trend, put it that way. I mean, it's not as trendy as it was back in the 80s where everywhere you looked was neon, but I just think every year, I'm thinking back over the years, and I think I've always seen bright colors used in design. Now, maybe that's just part of the trend. It just means that it's going to continue, and that's possible. But this is definitely one I can embrace. I know how to design with bright colors, so hey, I may be following this trend in 2024. Now, trend number 5 is grainy gradients. And I actually like this one because I've been doing this for years. I love a good gradient in something, and I love adding grain to the gradient. I think it gives it so much character. In fact, I'm talking about back in the day, back in my day. No, back before, whenever we would calculate a gradient and just computers and printers weren't as sophisticated as they are now, we had to be careful with gradients because if you didn't calculate, we actually had to calculate, do math. Yeah, imagine that. We had to do math and figure out, okay, if we did a gradient from 60% to down to 30% and the gradient was 3 inches long or whatever centimeters long, then that was possible. But if we made it a little bit longer, if we made it 4 inches, then we're going to get banding in it. And banding is when the gradient isn't smooth. Like you see, it starts fading. And all of a sudden you kind of almost see a line across it where the fading stops and then picks up again. And it really looks bad on a gradient. Well, that was the way we used to do it. We had to calculate everything that we were doing. But the way to compensate that, or one way to compensate for that, was to add grain to your gradient. So if you added grain, then those bandings would almost disappear. You were able to eliminate them with the grain. So I've been doing this for years, and I still do this on a regular basis because I just love the look of grain in a gradient. So this trend I could definitely get on board with, but to me, it's not a trend. It's something I've always been doing. And if you want to know how I usually go about doing it, when I create a gradient in, say, Photoshop, I just add noise, but I add a monochromatic noise so that it doesn't really affect the colors of the blend. If you just add regular noise, it adds all sorts of extra colors in there. But if you add monochromatic noise, then it just adds a grain to it. And depending on the intensity, and sometimes I'll do it on a separate layer and change the opacity and all that, it can create some really cool effects. So this is one trend that I really do like. Now, visual trend number 6 is collages, where you take multiple images and cut them up and piece them together to create something new. Now, I can say that, first of all, I love this design. I love looking at it. I love trying to decipher it. I love trying to figure out how the designer put it together. What did they do? How did they come up with this idea? Where do images end and other images start, or different pieces within? I love doing that. And yet it's not something I feel comfortable doing. I just don't think my mind works well enough to put a collage in this sense together. There are much better designers at doing this, at taking all sorts of different elements and combining them into the same piece. Elements that you would think wouldn't work well together, and they make them work seamlessly with textures and pictures and fonts, and some stuff looks like it's torn and just put on top. Again, I love this design style. It's just not something I feel comfortable. I don't think I have I was going to say the talent. No, I do have the talent to do it. It's just not the way my mind works. It would take me a long time to come up with something. And this is the type of design that I would constantly be second guessing myself. Is this look right, or should I do this, or should I do that, or do something differently? So even though I love this one, the collage idea, I don't think it's something that I will be doing this year. Now, trend number 7 is 3D effect. And the example they're showing here is just things that are three-dimensional illustrations. So they're made to look like, you have a little picture of a house. Well, it's a house in 3D. Or you have a little picture, like a caricature, instead of just having a 2D drawing of a caricature, now your caricature is in 3D. And I think with the introduction of AI in, the becoming part of our toolbox, I can see 3D becoming much more used, because even myself, I've done it where I've asked for AI to create an image, and I said, make me a 3D image, and I've used it in design. So, where it used to be, I need an illustration of, say, a dog. Well, now it's like, give me a 3D illustration of a dog, and you get this cute little 3D model of a dog that you can use in the design. And they also talk about 3D letters. Like, we're going to start seeing more and more things like the example they're showing here is, letters made out to look like balloons. So they're 3D in that sense, where they look like balloons that are floating there, and you have a shadow in the background and all that. So again, with the advance in AI and it becoming more and more used by designers as part of their regular toolkit, I can see this trend really taking effect. So this is one that, yes. But I mean, I think anybody could have anticipated this because of the advances in AI, that 3D stuff, generated by AI is just going to become more and more popular. Now, what I hope is that it doesn't happen like other trends. Like, remember when I talked about the beveling and all that in Photoshop? I just hope it doesn't come to the point where everywhere you look, it starts to look the same and has all this 3D look to it. In which case, the trend may be going back to 2D stuff. Now, trend number 8 is 3D glow. And all this one is 3D elements that we created in the previous one, but they're just colored to create this kind of glow effect to them. Adding vibrant colors and extra shine and that sort of stuff to make those 3D images glow or stand out. And the example they're using is stuff that almost like neon lights or, water or liquid with like bright colors. So that sort of thing. Again, if you can get access to this report at the link that I told you, take a look at these things and get a feel for what I'm talking about. So 3D glow is the 8th trend on their list. Now, trend number 9 is Art Nouveau. And I find this one funny because Art Nouveau is, first of all, it's been around for decades and decades, this style. And it's the type of trend that pops up every few years. It just becomes popular because it's so beautiful. Whether it's using it as decoration in your design, whether it's using it as frames or borders, or a lot of illustrations of people done in an Art Nouveau style. It's a lot of smooth flowing lines with natural type motifs. It's very elegant, but it's been around for years. And this is a trend that, it's one of those things you could put on any trend report and you think, yeah, because it's going to pop up. I think every year I see people doing stuff in this style. And it's one of those styles that'll last stand the test of time. I think that's the way you say it. Now, this is another one. Even though I love it, it's not something I've gone to. I have done stuff in the past that you could say is, Art Nouveau lookish, but it's not my go-to. It would almost be like a client would have to ask for something in the Art Nouveau style for me to actually do it. It's not something that just pops into my mind. It's like, oh, I'm going to do it in this style. I'll probably think of something else to do before I'll take this one, just because it's not a style I'm very comfortable working in, even though I'm capable of it. But I can see this one picking up because, as I said, it's been around for ages, and every few years it just seems like it's almost like it's a trend that trends every couple of years. Now, trend number 10 is old engraving, and I really like this one. It's a very vintage look. It's almost like 17th, 18th century type things where you have like engravings or wood cut elements and that sort of stuff. They see that making a comeback for this year. It's very nostalgic. It looks, it's the type of thing that when you see this design, it almost looks established. You see a company that designs their logo in this style or a flyer in this style. Even if it's a brand new company, you look at it and you think, wow, this looks established. This company has been around because of the look. Now, this style does remind me. When I first got into the design industry, I got in '89, so late '80s, early '90s. Back then, like when I worked at the print shop, clip art came in these large catalogs. Like when I'm talking large, I'm talking, we used to get these binders that were roughly about 3 feet wide by 2 feet tall. And they had these big pages on them, and you would just flip through the pages, and it had hundreds and hundreds of these little images, which was our clip art back then. And a lot of them, when I look at these styles, that reminds me back then, where we would flip through and there would be, there's a little picture of maybe a little cherub done in like a woodcut, or there's a little corner element to do for a frame, or there's a nice little flower, and most of them are illustration style, again, like engraving. So they look almost like they're etched type look. And it's very reminiscent of back then. That's the way a lot of the clip art looked. So I love it just because, it's part of my roots and I could see using this. It's the type of thing that has to be used well, in my opinion. You have to have a feel. And as I mentioned, it's almost like, because it's a vintage look, you almost have to add it to a vintage design. I'm not saying you can't use this style, this old engraving look, in something modern. But I think it lends well to something that looks vintage. So I could see myself using this one. Now, trend number 11 is groovy cartoon. And the way I can explain this one is, think of the old, I don't know if you've ever seen the footage of the drive-in theater. If you don't know what that is, it's a movie theater that you actually watch in your car. You drive in, you park in a parking lot, and there's this giant screen in front of you, and you watch the movie. Well, before the movie, they would have these little cartoons, and it would show like, a little chocolate bar or a little hot dog with arms and legs. Well, that's kind of the impression I'm getting with this groovy cartoon. Even the examples that they're showing, like they have an example here where they have a slice of pizza, a hamburger, a taco, and a donut, and they all have arms and legs and eyes and a mouth and that. So it's very kind of, as they say, groovy cartoons. It's very retro style, like old 50s, 60s style cartoonish, with very fun images, bright colors, a lot of black and white as well. So I'm not an illustrator, so I don't think I would be drawing anything like this, but I could actually see myself using some of these in a design. I think they would be a lot of fun. It would take the right design to do it, but I can see some use for this. As for it trending, I don't know. Like, again, I don't understand how they come up with these. These are the trends that were going to happen this year. I don't know how many designers are going to think, ooh, you know what? I think groovy cartoon is the way to go on this one. But it is very interesting, and I really like the way they look. Now, trend number 12 is chrome effect. And this was another one that took me back, because I remember years and years ago, along the same times when we started doing bevel in type and bevel and stuff in Photoshop, chrome effect was another one, because there was a filter you can add to something in Photoshop. Actually, there still is, where you can turn something and make it look like chrome. So this is not the first time. Now, with the benefit today of 3D stuff, and especially with the introduction of AI, you can create some beautiful things with this chrome effect. Now, when I say chrome, it doesn't necessarily have to be that silver, that chrome that you would see on a vintage, an old car bumper type thing. It can be all sorts of different colors. Like you can have chrome effects using pastel colors or bright colors, but it's just that shininess. It almost looks like whatever it is made out of metal. And it can be an illustration and stuff like that, but it has that glow to it that you would see off of metal, or, when you spill something oily and it has that kind of rainbow sheen to it, that sort of thing. That's a chrome effect as well. So they say that this is going to pick up. There's going to be more of this year, but I've seen this come and go over the years many, many times. I don't think it ever left. I mean, I don't think any trend has ever truly left, as long as somebody out there is doing it. But this is an interesting one, and I can actually see myself using this. I've done it before in the past, and every once in a while, I love a metal or metallic effect to a design. Although my go-to is kind of a brush steel type look as opposed to a chrome type look, but I could see myself using this one. Now, trend number 13 is glass morphism. And this one is really hard to describe. The best way to describe it, it's as if your item that you're designing or elements of your design are made of a translucent glass. So not a clear glass, but a translucent. So it makes everything a little bit blurry, but stuff shines through it. So you can see what's behind it. I've used this on websites. If you have, like, say, a background image and you want to put type on it, and so you've got your hero image and the type just, it's a little hard to read. I'll add a box behind the type and I'll make that box a little translucent so you can see the background through it, but it's blurry a little bit and the colors are muted a little bit so that the type on top can read better. So this is one I've used before. And some of the examples they're showing are icons where, the colors behind them will show up, or just many different design elements where, as I said, it looks almost like it's a frosted glass so that you can see the design element from behind it, and you can incorporate this into your design. Now, I like this one. I've used it before, and I don't know if it's something that's going to pick up more. I mean, I seem to see this a lot, especially in the web design world. I see this a lot. It's a great way whenever you have type on top of a busy background. It's a great way to get that type to stand out. So, whether I would call it a trend, I don't know. They're calling it a trend. I don't know if I would, but I could see this picking up steam in this year. So anyways, now the 14th trend, and this one I don't really get very much. It's called neo-brutalism. And what they're saying is it's a design that's very bold and fearless, using big chunks of solid colors, strong shapes, very bold elements, but still have a modern flair to it. Now, this is one, when I looked at the trends, I kind of went, I could see this happening, but in my mind, being, I don't know if you want to call me traditional just because of my time in the industry, I personally look at this style and I find it a little amateurish. Like, even the examples that they give, it's like, there's certain things, like I'm looking at one of the examples right now and I'm seeing so many things that I would improve on that design just because of, things not lining up properly or not following a good hierarchy. So to me, unless it's just the examples that they're giving, I'm not impressed with this trend. I can understand doing bold elements, big, strong colors, solid colors, and all that. And maybe it's just the examples that they're showing. But anytime I see something in this style, or sorry, I shouldn't say anytime. There's some times where this style works really, really well. But there's a lot of times when I see something in this style, I just look at it and I go, there's things that could have been done better with this. So anyways, and that brings us to our final. And I think this one, FreePik, I'm going to call you out on this one. This is a little bit of a cop-out. Their final trend of the year is to use Peach Fuzz, which is Pantone's color of the year. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with this. It's, peach fuzz color. So it's a very muted, peachy, orangish color. And I don't know. I don't know if this is really going to happen. Maybe if you look at the fashion world, I don't know how well the fashion world follows the Pantone color of the year trend, but I know that a lot of designers, when the trend was, or the color was first announced, a lot of them made fun of it and said, I'm not going to use this. And I don't see any reason for me to use this color. So I think they just threw this one in because it was Pantone's color of the year. I don't actually see this becoming a trend, at least in the design world. Maybe in the fashion industry or something like that. Maybe, I don't know. I don't follow that industry. But as far as design goes and websites and all that stuff, I don't see this color picking up very much. Anyways, those are the 15 trends that FreePik is predicting will hit it off in 2024. Now, I would love for you to take a look at this thing and let me know. Send me an email at feedback@resourcefuldesigner.com. Let me know what you think of these trends. Are there any that I said I didn't think would work that you think would be really great or that you do on a regular basis? Like I mentioned the collage thing, which I don't do. Well, there's some designers, they specialize in that. Are you one of those people? Let me know. Let me see some of your work. I love looking at other designers. And that's the thing, even though I don't do something or it's not a style I like working in, even styles that I don't like, I can still appreciate them. I've never been a fan of, the grunge style design. But I can look at the design and really appreciate, the effort that was put into the work, the way things were done, even though it's not a style I particularly care for, and it's definitely not a style I would be comfortable trying to design in. In fact, I've turned a client down before because they wanted that sort of style, and I told them it's like, that's not something I'm comfortable with. I don't care for that style very much. I don't know, like, whatever I design would not look as good as somebody who is more familiar and more comfortable with that style that they can design. So I recommended that they go find somebody else. But I would love to know. Take a look at the report and let me know what you thought of it. And as I said, the whole trend thing, I love that FreePik is doing this. I mean, it brings attention to them. It gave me a talking point. Maybe it'll get you talking on things. So, I mean, it was very valuable for them to do that, and I can appreciate that. But I still have a hard time thinking that, okay, you can predict that this is what designers are going to do this coming year. I mean, personally, I may just not do any of these out of spite. Like, I don't know. It's like I may say, okay, well, this was supposed to be a trend. Well, if that's the case, I don't want to be trendy. I don't want to be a designer that's following the trends and doing everything that everybody else is doing. I want to be different. So maybe I'll purposely avoid some of these at this point. Anyways, that's it. That's all I had to say. I wanted to share this report for you. Thank you very much, FreePik, for reaching out to me and asking me if I'd want to. They just wanted me to mention it. And I said, you know what? Why don't I just make a whole episode based on this? It gave me something to talk about. But that's it for this one. So thank you very much. By the way, if you want to talk about these trends or any other trends or anything else to do with design, please head on over to resourcefuldesigner.com/community. Join the community where we have all sorts of conversations talking about all sorts of aspects of print design, web design, package design, everything you can think of. Everything is free game when it comes to discussing design in the community. And there are many, many talented people in there that can help and love participating and communicating and sharing ideas. So if you work for yourself and you just need some people to talk to that understand where you're coming from, or if you're an established designer and you are looking for maybe people to collaborate with, or whatever, you need more friends in the design space. So head on over to resourcefuldesigner.com/community and join today. Until next time, I am Mark Decote wishing you all the best with your design business. And as I always do, I want to remind you to stay creative.
Thanks for listening to the Resourceful Designer Podcast at resourcefuldesigner.com.